So I just want to take the time to go through, each of the terms and the names of the theorists, and to just give you a snippet about each of them so that you have a general idea about what they're talking about. So that when you look them up in your textbook and you find that relevant material, you have a voice connected to it. You have an understanding of what it is that they're talking about. So that's what we're going to spend our time doing today. If you understand all of these concepts, just understanding the general idea alone will help you to study. Because every piece of information that you get about these concepts from this point on is only going to add to your knowledge. Some of you are visual learners, so you'll read it and you'll get it. Others of you, you need to hear it. You need to hear somebody talking about it and make that connection to time and experience and moment in order to get it. So this is what we're going to try to do. So I hope this is a good learning tool for you. It's a multiple choice exam. So what I'm doing right now is I'm giving you information so that you have an understanding of the concept walking into this exam. Now, you may have to think critically when you answer the multiple choice question, but at least you'll understand the concept so that you can do a better job answering the question. All right? So, okay? All right, first, Auguste Comte. Comte is the founder of positivism. You'll remember positivism if you place yourself in this conversation that we had about functionalism, and how the second main idea of functionalism was that the functional idea had to be objectively real. So that you needed proof, you needed facts, you needed statistics, you needed something that was connected to the norm in society, something that you could prove to show me that this is actually real. So Comte helps to frame this definition, what is sociology? Because remember, in order for it to be sociology, we had to have research methods. We couldn't just have this journalism idea where we had somebody coming up with something and just jotting it down. You needed to collect information and data from lots of people so that you can create an objective idea, a social fact about what something is by using concrete data that is given to you by somebody who appears to be an expert in the area. That's what positivism is all about. Getting expert data that is objective. Sociology becomes objective when we set aside our own personal opinion and we go out and we collect research and data in order to prove something. So Comte is a father of that. That's why he's one of the fathers or the founders of sociology, because he helps us to understand what the definition of sociology really is. One that's connected to this positivist notion that we need expert opinion. We need multiple sources of data that help make our idea real. It's only real from a positivist perspective if it is based upon an objective reality, collecting data, getting lots of information to have something that is as close to a fact as humanly possible. As close to a fact as humanly possible from an expert perspective. Comte gives us that. C. Wright Mills. We opened up our class with a sociological imagination. Remember, you all were sitting in the chair, you were shaking, your legs were, burning, you were trying to make something real. You were trying to see something from a perspective of someone else. Well, the idea behind that is that certain groups of people hold an ideology. Certain groups of people see the world in a certain way. Collective interests. There's this idea that if you belong to a certain class group, that you might see the world and see situations and understand how to approach those situations in a way that is distinct from another class. Because there's a collective consciousness. There's a collective consciousness of that group. C. Wright Mills wants people to understand that there are groups of people that may see the world and understand the world in a certain way. That it's not a conspiracy that these groups of people who are rich have certain interests with regards to their status, their lifestyle, and their social networks. It's not a conspiracy that people who are rich usually marry other people who are rich. It's because they have a collective you understand that you may think a certain way, then that helps you understand how creative you may have to be to understand somebody else's issue. So we are different, you know. We have a different way of seeing the world. And it's not a conspiracy. It's a reality that across the board, some people interact differently, they have access to different resources, and they have a different type of social network or political ideology, political view that they might have. So when we have this sociological imagination, that's our ability to step back and say, hey, look, I know I'm different, but let me try to see the world the way this other person sees the world. Because you respect that. You respect that everybody is not the same. You respect that these different groups are going to have a different way of seeing the world. C. Wright Mills focuses on this main group called the power elite. Those are the people who own the capital. Those are the people who have most money. They have the perfect set of coordinated interests. They have the right attitude. They have the right sense of respect. They have the right amount of money, the right lifestyle, and they know the right people to get things done. So C. Wright Mills talks about the power elite. Those are the dominant people in the military, in politics, and also our richest people. The 1% in America who own 99% of the money. The 1% who own 99% of the money. And we'll get to that because I don't know if you know that. I don't know that you understand that there's a group of people in the United States who own 99% of the money, and everybody else here is sharing 1%. Durkheim. Durkheim is a sociologist. He's a social psychologist also. Remember, social psychologists are micro level, just like George Herbert Mead. So remember, Durkheim's focusing on functionalism. We know that functionalists use micro level, organizational level, and macro level theory. And you learned that in that homework assignment that you did where you talked about crime. And you talked about the micro level focus, the objectively real, positivist, organizational level focus, and the structural, institutional. What will the institutions do on a macro level? So that's how we can understand that Durkheim is also a social psychologist because he uses micro level. He's also a philosopher. What Durkheim is really concerned about is the amount of integrity that society can have. So how we respect the rules and coherence, how we can get together, how we can work together and understand those rules and regulations. Can we respect the rules and regulations? Can we understand the rules and regulations as society becomes more developed? So as society, as we have all these new careers, all these new positions, as technology evolves over time, will people understand the sets of rules and regulations that relate to all of that stuff? Or will we have something that he calls anomie? A-N-O-M-I-E. A-N-O-M-I-E. Anomie. Anomie is frustration. Frustration, strain, a headache, chaos. Is it going to be chaotic as society develops? Or are people going to know how to adjust and work together and fill in the gaps and know what to do? A good example of that is after women go into the workplace, after they successfully enter the workplace, who's going to take care of the kids at home? Is it going to be anomie and chaos because now they've changed their gender role? Or are we going to develop daycares? Are we going to develop other institutions in society to address the needs of the kids if the women switch their roles? So is there going to be anomie and strain and chaos once women change? Or is society going to adapt and figure out how to make that work? So Durkheim is really interested in what happens over time as things become more complicated. How are the rules going to work for people? Are the rules going to work to help people? Are the rules going to work to make people have a smooth transition? Or is there going to be anomie, chaos, strain? Durkheim also does a study about suicide rates. And he successfully connects religion and sociology. Religious studies and sociology. Why? Because he wants to talk about suicide rates among Catholic and Protestant populations. Weber gives us the Protestant ethic. We'll talk about that soon. but based upon your religious beliefs. So based upon this institution, religion, what is it about the Word in the Bible? What is it about your learning? What is it about your spirituality that would cause you to then commit suicide if you weren't able to follow those tenets and those beliefs? So how does suicide come about based upon religious beliefs? That's what he studies. It's very interesting. What would make you kill yourself? What would have to happen in society for you to change your life? And how is your spirituality connected to that? Why do you want to live? He talks about that. He also introduces positivism. He makes it a little bit stronger. He refines the definition of positivism, and what is sociology? This idea of collecting research, collecting data, speaking to lots of people, finding out different perspectives, and then bringing them all together in theory. Durkheim does that. Next, Harriet Martineau. Harriet Martineau is focusing on sexual identity, women in particular, the identity of women, offering a feminine perspective. So one of the first sociologists to introduce something from a woman's perspective, from a gendered perspective. And that's not common in sociology, in the late 1800s, for somebody to talk about something from a gendered perspective. Usually things are just talked about from the man's perspective, because that's the person who's able to talk, and that's the person who you're listening to, because their word is positivist, it's an expert word, and it's a word that you trust. But now she introduces a gendered perspective, which is interesting. She's focusing on politics, religion, and she thinks that we can use a sociological analysis to better understand women and their oppressed relationship in society. So she's going to talk about how women have a lesser status than men. And she's going to talk about how they feel and what they're going through, what life is like. So we're going to use sociology to help us understand somebody's situation. So she's the first to really use sociology to better understand people. That's that micro level understanding that you're going to get about feelings, about emotions. So sociology becomes a conduit, a way that you understand what people are going through, the struggles that they're going through. So just think critically about the types of research that were born because of the way she uses sociology. So now we want to understand how people feel, and how minority groups feel is important. It's valuable. Why is a woman a minority group? Because they lack power, and because they're a huge population of people who are oppressed. Because at this point, more than ever, when she's speaking in the late 1800s, they are positioned below the men. Now, women have taken lots of strides toward equality and equity, but at the time that she introduces this perspective, she's trying to tell the public how women feel or what they're going through is important, it's valuable, and we should use research to figure this out. Next, Herbert Spencer coins the phrase survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive. It's about Darwinism. Most of all, it's about evolution. He wants to use biology and culture, this idea of the way you live, how you act, the things that you do on a regular basis, the skills that you hold, connected to your biological origin, the group that you come from, your biology, genetics, to determine whether someone is powerful or can be powerful or not. And he thinks there's a connection between these taxonomy studies, Taxonomy, taxonomy studies that look at racial characteristics, that look at the shapes and sizes of the brain and the skull, that look at body posture, that look at skin color, that look at the way bones are structured in the body, that look at all of these biological, they call at the time, characteristics, and determine whether people can be intelligent or not. Intelligence theory. So we look at your culture, and we look at the biology, and we determine whether you are smart or not. And if you're not smart, you can't make any money. So we create a hierarchy because of the way people look and because of their cultural practices. The start of racism. Karl Marx. Karl Marx is an economist, sociologist, He's a historian, a journalist, and he's a revolutionary socialist. Get capitalism out of here, he thinks. Capitalism is poison to Karl Marx. We need to be concerned about the people, about unity. We don't need to be concerned about this group of people who earn all this money and make us work until we can't breathe, and they aren't concerned with our ability to put food on the table. Let's get capitalism out of here, and let's create a system where there's a better balance of money. And so people like C. Wright Mills, they go back on the work of Karl Marx and they say, oh man, if people listen to Karl Marx, then maybe 1% wouldn't control 99% of the money. But people were so interested in these categories, these governing styles, capitalism versus socialism versus communism. They were concerned with the vested interest of the global economy as a whole. So Karl Marx is trying to introduce an idea, but all people can hear is the word socialism. They don't hear anything else that he's saying. And that happens to you all on a regular basis. There are these trigger words that stop you from listening to what people are saying. They could be introducing an idea that could change your life, but because they use a certain word or a concept, you turn the volume off. And that's what people did to Karl Marx. They turned the volume off. Or they tried to contradict all the other pieces of his theory. He wanted us to understand that you have labor and then you have products. You have a certain group of people who are going to do this hard work, and the hard work that you do is going to define you. So everybody here is defined by the type of work that they do. Your privilege, the possibilities, the lifestyle that you could have, the power that you could have, it's all based upon your position to the market, the means of production. So what relationship do you have to production? That's how we define your quality and your worth in society. You're only worth as much as you can produce. And that's how they define people. Next, Max Weber. Weber is a philosopher just like Durkheim. He's also an economic sociologist. So he's going to focus on the relationship between money and interaction. Remember, when he talked about power, remember we talked about that? He talked about how you could have power or get money by the reputation or the status that you have. He talked about how you could gain money by a role that you're going to play out, a certain lifestyle that you're going to live out. That lifestyle is going to symbolize power. And by who you know and what you know. The ideology. Who wants to be around you? Who's going to move in your direction based upon similar interests? You gain power based upon the people you affiliate yourself with. You affiliate yourself with a bunch of people who make bad choices, that's who you are. You are the people who make bad choices. You affiliate yourself with people who are productive, who are moving places, who are doing things, you're going to learn the knowledge that they have. You're going to move in that direction. The more you know, the more people you know, the less work you're going to do. So Weber talks about different ways that you can develop power or the ways that you can earn money. He's an economic sociologist. He's trying to teach you something. He's trying to show you. If you want to make money, if you want to be successful regarding money, you have to have a good attitude. You have to think critically about the lifestyle that you're going to produce. You have to be around good people and know things. You put all that together, you get the power elite. The perfect set of coordinated interests, says C. Wright Mills. So think about it. The work of Weber, the work of Karl Marx, the work of C. Wright Mills, the work of Durkheim, all of this stuff comes together. You put all of this stuff together and you open the door, these unique possibilities to think about how you can stabilize yourself and how you can make sure that you're as productive as your situation will allow you to be. They're talking about W.E.B. Du Bois. W.E.B. Du Bois was the first African American man or person to get a PhD from Harvard University. He was also a co-founder of the NAACP. He was a historian. He was a sociologist. He was also a civil rights activist. He believed in this philosophy called the talented 10th philosophy. So the talented 10th philosophy. The idea was that you have a series of stakeholders in a community, and that those stakeholders should be responsible for the community as a whole. So if you're intelligent, it's your responsibility to educate your community and the people around you. You shouldn't live in a gated community and just stay inside your home and keep all your knowledge to yourself. But instead, if you make it, if you're in a group of people who are, if you're with a group of people who are disenfranchised and who don't know any better, you take that macro level knowledge, that who you know and what you know, the cultural capital, the knowledge that you have, and you share that with the other people around you so that you can help your community to grow. And he thought that was one of the only ways that the African American community would grow, is that you transform Ebonics or slang into proper English by having those people who earned the degree to go back in the community and to share that knowledge with their other community members. It was a totally different way of understanding social mobility and the way that you grow. Well, you could become knowledgeable even if you don't have a college degree, like Weber said, based upon who you know and sharing that particular information. By having the knowledge, then people could potentially change their attitudes about you, because now you can communicate and you can interact. Once people respect you and they want to communicate and interact with you, then they'll allow you to be a part of their lifestyle. But people have to respect you. They have to think you know how to communicate with them. They have to think that you're worthy. Your status is worthy of communicating. And W.E.B. Du Bois thought that those talented those people who were able to access education, that it was their responsibility to raise the community. It takes a community to raise a child. You've heard of that before, right? So that it was the stakeholders that we were relying on in order to educate this community of people who have been disenfranchised for so many different reasons. Whether through Spencer's idea of evolution, saying that it is through biological traits that you can't succeed. Well, then we need to counter biological traits with cultural traits. We need to educate you so that you know what to do, so that you understand. Because W.E.B. Du Bois said, these people were not born this way. This is a learning process. It's social learning theory, differential association theory. The idea that through social learning, you can actually educate yourself and you can move forward. These people are not dummies. They're not animals. They're not monsters. They just have not been taught what they need to know in order to progress. That's what he talked about. So obviously, W.E.B. Du Bois rested the success of lower income communities on education. That through education, even if somebody thought somebody was, biologically dysfunctional, that through education, we all could be uplifted. If you educate yourself, education is a main tool to help you to mobilize, to get yourself from one situation to another. To increase your status, we need to rely on education. And that means we have to trust in the education system. The education system has to be valid as well. Applied sociology. This is a type of sociology where you solve problems. You solve problems. Your goal is to observe how people interact, and then you're going to try to solve a problem. The problem can be about an individual issue. It can be about a global issue. It can be micro level, organizational level, macro level. The idea is that you want to solve a problem. Your goal of your research, that applied sociology, your goal is to provide a solution. So I see that something is wrong, and I want to use sociology to make a difference. That's what you're doing with applied sociology. You're trying to change something. You're trying to make a difference. You're trying to solve a problem. Now, basic sociology, in contrast, is about discovery. It's about discovery. We want to explore human groups. We want to explore their interaction. And we want to discover new things. We want to be able to explain and describe what is happening, what's going on. What does this interaction mean? What do these relationships tell us? That's basic sociology. They're not trying to solve anything. They're just trying to discover. Next, the bourgeoisie, Karl Marx. Key thing about the bourgeoisie. Originally, the bourgeoisie was a middle class group. because the middle class group controlled production. And then there were elitist people who then took from the bourgeoisie and gained from the bourgeoisie, like middle management. But eventually, over time, the bourgeoisie became a ruling class. You got to remember that about the bourgeoisie. Originally, it was a middle class philosophy. The middle class English, the bourgeois, were those people who control production. But the idea here is that the bourgeoisie control the means to production. The means to production is the process that you use in order to produce something. So you can have an idea all day long, and you can be the person, the proletariat, who are actually doing the production. But the bourgeoisie dictates how that's going to be done, when it's going to be done, why it's going to be done, what tools you're going to use, how you make that up, what things are going to mean, the symbolic nature of everything. They determine all of those things, and the proletariat are just the puppets doing what the bourgeoisie tell them to do. So the bourgeoisie are controlling the means to production. They control the money, the capital. Anything that you use to get money, the capital. And they control the means, how you produce and why you produce. And the funny thing about that is, as a person in Karl Marx's theory, the economy, your position, determines who you are. So not only are the bourgeoisie determining the means to production, they're also defining your character and who you are. Because you're defined by the work. And they create the work. They create the process for the work. So all you are puppets to the system that define you, tell you what to do, how to do it, and exploit you. That's what Karl Marx is talking about. Calvinism. Calvinism is a branch of Protestantism. The idea here, when we talk about Calvinism, is that if a particular group falls, if they fail, they can then confess to God, and then God will forgive them for their sins. God changes their unwilling heart into an obedient heart, and a person who is eager to be successful and move forward. So you can make a mistake, but it is through the will of God that you're forgiven and obedient, and you follow the rules. There is a reason why we talk about Calvinism. There's a reason why we talk about Protestantism. And what happens here is that these theorists want to explain why capitalism can remain such a dominant way of life, a dominant economic philosophy, if rationally we all can sit back and think critically about the relationship between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. Everybody here can think about the relationship between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. You can think about this drive to, for a certain group to control the means to production. And you can see how one group is in charge and how another group is suffering to survive and suffering to live. The question that was asked in class is, what is the relationship between Calvinism and sociology? Well, if a person who is a social economist, if they're a sociologist and an economist, they're going to try to explain why something that could be so devastating to a certain group of people, how that can remain consistent and how it can remain successful. So if this group, who are Calvinists, if they believe in this supreme rule of God, if they believe in God as the sovereign entity that controls all things, if the rules and regulations that drive capitalism are directly connected to their mores. Remember we talked about mores? Those are the norms, those are the behaviors that are most strict, most serious. If those rules and regulations are connected directly to their mores, which are also interconnected with their spirituality and their beliefs, they're going to continue to follow God. And as they follow God, they're not going to be thinking about the rules and regulations. They're just following God. They're following the rules and regulations of God. So as long as they're following God, then they're doing the right thing. They're making the right choices. Even if the results are this, they're following the tenets of God and they're making choices from their heart. It's not a conspiracy. They're not making these choices to put anybody in a bad situation. That's why we have this philosophy called meritocracy. In a society of merit, you work really hard. You work really hard so that you can receive a reward. And those people who are lazy, those people who don't work, those people who are members of the proletariat that don't work to try to be a member of the bourgeoisie, those people are failing because they didn't work hard enough, because they didn't make the right choices. And that's what the Protestant ethic is all about. It's all about working hard toward a goal and using your spiritual ideology to make a difference. It's not about rules and regulations that keep people down. It's about merit, and it's about mores. It's about God. And so capitalism remains strong because these people aren't really following rules of the government. They're following the law of God. And they're becoming more and more rich. They're controlling more things. They're making choices. They're creating business ideas. They're doing all of these things following the core principles of God. And so Weber and Durkheim, they write about that. That's when Durkheim starts talking about suicide. How your religious ideologies could cause you to actually kill yourself if you can't follow the rules and regulations and do it in a way that there's a positive outcome and that you feel like you're following God. So then you die. If I can't be a man of God, then I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't live. I should kill myself because I can't make the best choices and produce the solutions that I'm trying to produce. Or I break a rule. And because I break a rule, because I break a law, I'm not just breaking the government's law, I'm breaking the law of God. So it's bigger. The rule of regulation in society is bigger than just a law written down in a book. It's connected to their spirituality. And that spirituality is so valid and important that they would kill themselves because of it. In some religions, there are some sins that are not as easy to forgive as others. And in your heart, if you can't forgive yourself, or if you don't believe that God can forgive you for whatever that is, then that's what Durkheim talks about as another reason why people kill themselves. Now, a capitalist is a person who, has money and property. They may invest in a business. They have a financial interest to protect. So they may invest in a business. They may have money, property. They have something called capital. And they're trying to invest that capital to produce more money. So if somebody has an invested interest in a product because they're trying to produce more money, then they fit the definition of being a capitalist. Money, economic interest, profit. Capitalist. Class conflict. Two other words that people sometimes use to explain class conflict are class warfare, a struggle between, a fight, or class struggle. So those all mean the same thing. Class conflict, class warfare, and class struggle. And what this is all about is tension in society that exists because people don't have the same economic interests or desires. They don't have the same interests or desires. So there's conflict. We don't believe the same things. We have different ideas. We have a different way of seeing or understanding the world. And that understanding is stopping one group from making the money. It's stopping one group from accessing the resources. They don't believe the right thing. They don't see the world in the right way. There's a right way and there's a wrong way sometimes. And then we have struggle. We have conflict. And it's all about resources. How these ideas stop you from winning. We have a struggle. Sometimes a winner and sometimes a loser. And they see the world in a different way. They're using a different lens to see the world. So we have to figure out how to bridge that relationship. We have to figure out how to put a Band-Aid on it. That's usually what we do. We put a Band-Aid on something until we can make it better later. Because that's what we have the resources to put a Band-Aid on something. That's common. And we try to make a difference. Next. Conflict theory. Well, conflict theory is the perspective in sociology that we use to talk about class conflict. We have this relationship that exists between the rich and the poor, or the people who have and the people who don't have. So inequality is at the center of the conflict. You have a group who has power and a group who doesn't have power. And we need to generate a consensus by coming together in some type of way to resolve the conflict. That's what conflict theory is all about. It's all about power. It's about power and how power is distributed in society. In order to solve something, the people who have power have to give up something. They have to be willing to generate a compromise. People who have power can't always get what they want. Sometimes they have to give up something for the people who are without. But everybody loses something. Remember that. It's not going to be a situation where everybody wins because we don't have a socialist society. We're not balancing things off so that everybody gets something. You get what you can. You get what the people on the top are willing to share. Especially if you aren't working hard. Especially if you're not living up to the merit philosophy that we have in society. We're not going to just give it to you. You got to work for it. We'll give you something. I'll give you a food stamp. But you have to figure out how to turn that food stamp into $25. You have to think critically and you have to figure out how to build yourself up. What do they say? They say, pull up your bootstraps and figure out how you're going to make a difference. But I'm not going to give it to you. You have to work for it. Anything in life, you have to work for it. I'm not giving you anything. You shouldn't want me to give it to you. You should want to work for it. In a society of merit, you should want to work hard. You should want to achieve something. You shouldn't want a handout. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about a society of merit, the land of the free, home of the brave. You're pitiful if you want a handout, they would say. You should want to work for it. That's what the society of merit is all about. Working hard to get something out of that. Hard work. To gain something. To move up in society, you have to do work. You have to have an idea. You have to understand that idea. Weber calls it Verstehen. 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 The ability to understand. The ability to understand. So we engage in an interaction with other people all the time. But your ability to understand what's going on, that's Verstehen. Weber believes that people can actually understand what's going on. If you're able to understand, then you should be able to grow. You work hard, but you have to know what you're working hard for. You have to have a goal. You have to understand what your purpose is. You have to be working hard for something. And once you have a purpose, once you understand what it is that you're trying to do, then you become motivated to keep going, to keep doing something. Nobody here wants to work hard for nothing. Nobody here wants to work hard for something that they don't understand. Well, why am I doing this? So you want me to push this chair? For what? Why do you want me to push this chair? What are we going to accomplish by pushing this chair? When we did the sociology of imagination exercise in the class, and I told you to get on the edge of the seat and to hold your hands up, some of you didn't want to do it because you didn't know why you were doing it. What is she having me do this for? This is silly. I feel stupid. Why are we doing this? Some of you said, well, I'm doing this because my professor asked me to do it. If somebody off the street came in and asked you to do that same exercise, would you look at them nutty? Like, for what? You want me to get on the edge of the seat and pretend like I'm holding something in the air? For what? You have to understand what you're doing. And you have to know the purpose. You have to understand why it is that you're engaging in that activity. By understanding what you're doing, you have merit, you move forward, you enhance your knowledge, and you're ready to go. And you're ready to integrate more ideas, Verstehen, that you understand by doing that. Functionalism. Functionalism is all about roles. Roles that people play out on a regular basis. Your behavior, your thought process, how you understand things. That's all about these roles that are being played out on a regular basis. We want to make sure that you believe in the system. So what are your beliefs? So if you want to come up with a rule based upon a functional analysis, you want to chime into people's beliefs. That's what we're talking about with those spiritual beliefs. You want to chime into the mores that people have. Because if you can invest in something that people believe in, then people are going to behave accordingly. That's what functionalism is all about. Role play. What roles do you play out, and do you believe in that particular role? If you believe in it, you're going to take it to the highest level possible. If you don't care, how many of you are going to do something if you don't care? There has to be some type of vested interest. So we want to develop norms in society. What is normal? And everybody here, most of the people here have to believe that it's actually normal for society to take that in as being normal behavior. Once you know what those norms are, then those norms help you function. They help you do what you have to do on a regular basis. How many people feel uncomfortable in a room if everybody thinks that they're abnormal? You have to believe in yourself. You have to believe in who you are. How you look, how you walk, how you talk, how you carry yourself. You have to believe that something is great about that in order for you to be successful. Most of you. If you think you're worthless, if you think you're not normal, then you're going to have chaos. Here we go again. Anomie, strain. Because you don't believe in your position. You don't believe you fit in. You don't believe that you're a part of society that is meaningful. Functionalism is all about the belief systems, the roles, and how those roles fit into our institutions. But you have to understand that the roles have to be normal. There has to be a majority rule about those norms. Or there has to be something so courageous and so dominant and so spectacular about that person that they're willing to step into a functional society as they are and deal with the consequences. Because if you don't fit norm in the society, boy, people are going to give you hell. If you don't fit the norm, they're going to give you a hard time. They're going to try to outcast you. They're going to try to not make you a part of the group. They're going to try to take away your money. They're going to try to take away your opportunities if you're not normal. So if you're not normal for whatever reason, you have to figure out how you're going to be successful in that context, because that's the type of world that we live in. A functional reality. That's what we're dealing with on a regular basis. Well, you can be a fool and not believe that that exists in society today. No matter how many people try to tell you we have this equality system where everybody loves everybody no matter what. That's why we learn about functionalism. That's why we're learning about this. We're learning about this so that you understand how you have to shift and move and what you have to do in order to get ahead in a society that's going to attack those people who don't fit the norm category. Do we like it? Maybe not, but it's real. Macro sociology, that's about institutions. Institutions are our major social systems, the structural systems, the systems that host the rules and regulations that dictate how we think and how we feel and how we interact in society. Manifest dysfunction. So there are these things called functions. Those are circumstances, situations, just different things, symbols that help us to live out our everyday interaction. The functions, the norms, the rules, what help us do what we need to do. Now the dysfunctions are things that disrupt everything, So the things that we're doing that stop us from moving forward, that stop us from being progressive, those are dysfunctional things. Now you have latent functions. Latent functions are things that you understand. They're conscious, a conscious effort that you're going to take in order to do something to help you move forward. You're thinking about it, But a manifest function or dysfunction, that's your unconscious. Unconscious. So sometimes we do things and unconsciously they create a dysfunctional outcome. Let me try to give you an example of a manifest dysfunction. There was a school project where you had to go in to a kindergarten classroom. And those children in the kindergarten classroom, they were going to do a play. But in order to do the play, all the children had to read a line. They had to read one of the lines on the paper. Well, you might think that if you just say, okay, first, everybody, let's read this together. And you pay very close attention and you see who the best readers are. And then you single out the best readers and you give them the longer sections of the play. Because you know they can do it. You want to build their self-esteem, you know they can successfully do it. But the children who don't read as well, you give them a shorter sentence to read, you understand, but you help them out with that. And you help them learn and you help them get through whatever that is. You don't want to put them in a situation where you embarrass them and you give them this really long, drawn-out thing to read and then they're up in front of the students, you know, frozen because they can't read it. That's what somebody would think maybe from a functional perspective. Maybe, right? But sometimes we don't think about the conflict end of it. Like, for instance, a latent function, consciously, I divided the children up into a group so that they could read what they had to do. It would allow us to function, and I thought about that consciously, okay? The manifest dysfunction is the idea that by dividing the kids who are in that small group, those who can't read, and by giving them a lesser passage to read, you are always keeping them on the bottom. So unconsciously, I'm constantly positioning those little babies on the bottom. What could have happened from a conflict perspective is they could have taken the passage home and parents could have worked with them until they were able to read the longer passage so that everybody had an opportunity to grow and to get a chance to read those long passages. But sometimes in society, we engage in these manifest dysfunctions because we think we're doing the practical thing and we think we're doing what's rational, but unconsciously, we can be creating a dysfunction for other people. We can be holding people back and keeping them in a lower position by not thinking critically about how our choices can unconsciously impact other people. That's a manifest dysfunction, you see? Micro-sociology. Those are all the little things. They're about everyday interaction on a very small scale, face-to-face interaction. Micro, face-to-face, very small, about feelings, symbols. Little, very small. Objectivity. It's connected to positivism. Objectivity, connected to positivism. It's related to what is reality. You know, I don't want to hope. I don't want to guess. I don't want to pray about it. I want to know the truth. I want to see it. I want to touch it. I want to feel it. I don't want to say, please, let's just cross our fingers. Have good luck. No. I want to know that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Objective. Outside of how people feel, their interpretations, I don't care how you feel about it. I just want to know the truth. Tell me what the objective reality is. What is the truth? The proletariat, just to piggyback on that again, those are the wage earners, the industrial workers. Their labor power determines their material worth. How much work they do determines what they're worth in society. Protestant ethic. Talked about this a little bit, but it's a concept that you'll hear if you take a theology class, sociology, you'll hear it in an economics class, you'll hear it in history. What the Protestant ethic is all about is diligence, hard work, being frugal in relation to your Christian faith. So these are the people who save lots of money. They save lots of money. And when we talk about Karl Marx and Max Weber, and we talk about Weber's understanding of power, we'll understand what class position that those people who live within their means and save, that those people will be more productive over time than that person who's trying to be flashy and trying to buy everything that they want. But the person who takes their time, who saves their money, because if you save your money, then you have credit. And once you have credit, you have access to more capital. Once you have access to more capital, then you have more access to more knowledge. Once you have access to more knowledge, then you have access to more people. You have more access to people, then you fix your attitude. You have more access to respect. You get more respect, and you have doors open to you in different communities for different lifestyles and different understandings of life. So those people who are frugal, those people who save as opposed to trying to impress somebody right now, those are the people who progress. That's the Protestant ethic. Public sociology. It's just an approach. It's an approach that people use. When people want to use sociology to talk about policy, political activism, things that relate to the public in general, then they just call it public sociology. It could be micro level, organizational level, macro level, but the lens that you're using is addressing the needs of the public, the general public. We want to do something to make a change or to help people understand. We want to use applied or basic sociology to help people understand policy, political activism, and even social movements. So it's just a type of sociology that focuses on a particular topic. So when you see that, think, oh, this is just subject oriented. This is sociology that's focusing on a particular subject. Research models. Research models are used to pretty much engage certain facts, to get certain results, to help us understand why, why these problems exist. Why do these problems exist? How are we going to advance society as a whole? We want to come up with theories because the goal is to help you better understand something. So once you stay in. Once you have a general understanding of that interaction, then you have more of a reason to go for it. You have more of a reason to achieve whatever it is. Because now you understand why you need to do it. You understand the purpose. You understand the value. Once you can put those ideas together, then you can make something a priority. But if you don't get it, then it's not relevant. It's not as relevant. So theories are going to help us to advance because they're going to help us to develop meaning and help us understand society a little bit better. Social class, that's what we're going to talk about next. Stratification. How people are broken up into groups based upon who has the most money. Who has access to the money. How are we going to divide people based upon the amount of money that they have? The reasons why. There are various reasons why people belong in certain social classes, like low income, middle income, upper class. Those are your ranks. Next, social integration. We talked about this last class. This idea of taking one culture and then blending another culture into the context of that one culture. Some people call it the melting pot. Some people call it assimilation. Some people call it being corny. Integration. Societies are just groups of people sharing some type of territory. So just a bunch of people who live in the same large area from society. Value-free is a part of positivism. If sociologists do research, if they connect all of these perspectives of other people, then that'll stop them from putting just their own ideas into the research. It'll be based upon a